Everyone, welcome back to Pine Hollow Auto Diagnostics. It's time for the Volvo 2005 Volvo V70, 212,000 miles. My friend's car. He used to live in State College and he got a job in Virginia. And he's down there and the thing leaves him stranded. He said he was driving along, kind of started sputtering a little bit, and then for about half a day it was acting up, and then filled it up with gas, got out of the gas station, and that's it. It died. Crank no start now. So it kind of sounds like a fuel issue. Okay, so he's down there, takes it to the Volvo dealership. I told him to forward me the estimate before you say anything, before you do anything. Pay him for the diagnosis, whatever, 150 bucks. And then give me the estimate, and I'll say if it's fair. Let me show you what they estimated. All right, here's the email that he got. After your check engine light diagnosis, the technician found that there's a faulty PEM and fuel pump. The quote to replace both is $2,000. There were a few other things the technician noticed while looking at your vehicle as well. Below is a list of the repairs and costs. Airbag light on, 145 to diagnose. Exhaust hanger. Upper oil trap hose split in two, interesting. Oil filter housing are leaking, oil O-ring is pinched, controller bushings blown out. Axle boots leaking. So the grand total here is like $6,000 for a car that's, I don't know if it's worth $6,000. Probably not. So Volvo Cars of Fredericksburg. For your replacement of the polymer electrolyte membrane, the part price of the PM is $510. Fuel pump is $480. Labor cost is $653. So if you add those three up, I don't know how they got $2,000 there. What the hell is a polymer electrolyte membrane? So after we diagnose this thing, I want to call the dealership just for kicks and ask them what that is. I've never heard of a car having a polymer electrolyte membrane that needs to be replaced. Anyways, back to the car. I have the charger hooked up because this stupid thing won't turn off its headlights. We're at 12 volts. We're charging at like 50 amps. So hopefully we'll keep this thing alive during the diagnosis. I got the trusty Autel booted up. I've had terrible luck with the snap-on Volvos, so we're gonna stick with this trusty scanner. So ECM is 1 fault, central electronics module has 4 faults, ABS, climate control, supplemental restraint system. A lot of good video material here. Let's start with the engine, see what we have. Engine control module internal fault. That's not good. Let's go back. Escape. CEM. What do we have in the CEM? Okay. Can we read the codes here? Resetting factory settings. Where's read codes? Sorry about the glare. Reading off extended diagnostic DTC. Oh, I guess it's fancy. Okay. Not just read codes. Alright, communication with PDM control module, signal missing. What does PDM stand for? Not sure. Communication with BCM, CEM, windshield wiper signal too low, low beam right signal too low. Not worried about lights or wipers. Intermittent faults, not very helpful. Okay, let's see if it'll start. Crank no start. Well, what if we take this thing from scratch? What do we do? I got injectors, ignition coils live under here. I'm wondering if there's a bidirectional control for the fuel pump. That would be nice just to hear it run. If it does, I mean, I'm kind of on the track of fuel pressure. There's no Schrader valve. So let's go to our ECM and see if we have any bidirectional controls here. Activating components and functions. Right here. Quick test of fuel tank system, huh? Whoa. Okay. There we go. Injectors, cooling fan, fuel pump relay on. Let's try that. Start. Nothing. Stop. No sounds. No anything. Okay. So, what's the quickest thing to do here? Well, the fuel pump conveniently lives under the rear seats. There's an access cover. So I want to pop this guy off, and if we have power and ground, we'll start there. Basic test light check. Power it on, maybe crank the vehicle, see if we have power at the fuel pump. If we don't, that's where we're going. Well, I popped the cover off. There's nothing here. It's just a wire going through it. It's like a pass through for one little wire for the ABS sensor. Where's the fuel pump? Alright, I'll keep looking here. There's another cover right down here. It's kind of wedged behind the seat. I'm wondering if we can get to it from right here. Maybe pop this metal plate up. I really don't feel like taking the seats out right now. Let me try that, see if we can get in there. Alright, back to the Volvo. Went for a nice mountain bike ride. Sunday ride. Now, so I still can't find the fuel pump. Of course, it's European. It looks like a blank plastic cover there where the fuel pump is supposed to be. What the heck? Here's the connector. 5 pins. We got a fat blue, fat black, a yellow, green, brown. I guess it's 6. No, I'm sorry, 5. So this side's 6, this side's 5. So fat blue, fat black, skinny yellow, skinny green, skinny brown. So this part right here goes into the interior of the vehicle, and I'm assuming towards the front of the car along the sill. So there it goes. All the wires go up there. This part, the one that's wrapped in this protective housing, goes down. And down is towards the bottom of the fuel tank. And so they put this fuel pump module right up here. Get a little light on there. There we go. There's the 5-pin connector. Fat blue, fat black, skinny yellow. And then the two little wires out of that same harness, the skinny green and brown, go somewhere else. Not really worried about those right now. We're worried about powers and ground for this fuel pump. And then we have a blue and an orange coming out of the module. I assume those are the powers and grounds to the fuel pump. So of course, to do proper testing, we need a wiring diagram. Here's what I pulled up on ALLDATA. They actually have colored, redrawn diagrams like Mitchell does nowadays. And this is way easier for European cars as opposed to going to the OEM Volvo stuff, which is all numbers, no colors. You have to go to a separate legend to find your components. Pain in the butt. If we really need to go there, we will. But let's start with this guy. So, fuel pump control module on fuel tank. We have that blue, black, and yellow, and then a white and a white black. So those two I already suspect are wrong. The two that go to the pump, wherever the pump is, we don't really care right now. We just want to do the testing right at the module. That seems to be the easiest place. So, look up description and operation here of this fuel pump control module. Powers the fuel pump and regulates the output, of the pump. Pressure changes. Supplied with battery voltage by the fuel pump relay and is grounded in the car body. The fuel pump relay is controlled by the CEM when requested by the engine control module. Okay, the engine cannot be started if the power supply of the fuel pump module is faulty because the fuel pump will then not be powered. Makes sense. Fuel pump control module is controlled by the ECM via serial communication. Very interesting, serial communication. The fuel pump control module then controls the fuel pump by transmitting a pulse width modulated voltage on the ground lead for the fuel pump. This means that the voltage drop across the pump changes, and with it the output of the fuel pump. Also see function. Okay. There are no diagnostics for the fuel pump control module. The ECM has diagnostics for fuel pressure regulation and associated components. Okay. The PWM signal from the ECM to the fuel pump control module can be read off using VIDA. The fuel pump control module is on the outside, on the right-hand side of the fuel tank. Okay. So, back to our wiring diagram. The yellow wire. Ooh, interactive. Let's try this out. Should probably get my internet a little closer to my laptop. Alright, so here we are. I opened up the interactive diagrams. Let's see what we can do. Yellow wire. Ooh, highlighted. So that goes to our engine control module. So that's the small wire pulse width modulated signal, or the serial communication as they call it, to the fuel pump control module. The blue wire comes from the CEM, so that is the power feed to the FPM. Black wire is a ground, G48, and then from there the control module decides how fast to spin the pump. So pretty straightforward, 5 wires on the module. First thing I want to do is, since the easiest thing right here is to get these, to just check for power on the fat blue and the fat black. Right here, we can hook up a test light, use a little piercing probe, boom, hook up a 4 amp test light. When you crank the car, that guy should light. So at least we'll check powers and grounds to the fuel pump control module. Then we can hook up a scope to the pulse width modulated signal. Finally, we can get under the car and hook up a I don't know what the best way to do this. I want to see the output of the control module. These two guys, I think it was an orange and a blue, not white and black. We can put a test light across those and see if the control module is bad, or the pump, or maybe a power feed. So we have a couple different variables here. Let's do some checking. Alright, well, the easiest thing to do was actually get the fuel pump module off. Here it is. A little crusty on the heat sink. And we don't know if there's any water intrusion in here, but it sits right on top of the tank, so you kind of expect it to get a little crusty. So the connector is now fairly easily accessible right there, and I have a test light hooked up to the blue and the black. That's the main power feed and ground to the module. So now let's turn on the car and see if the test light lights up. They'll at least check for the main powers and grounds to the module. So there's the test light. Key on. There's key on. Nothing. Nothing. What the heck? We're supposed to have power on that wire. Huh. Okay, well, I guess the direction's changing a little bit. So are we missing a main power or ground to this module? Phew, that kind of blows my mind. And that comes from the central electronic module. We could do a bidirectional control here, turn on the fuel pump relay, let this boot up and do a bidirectional control, but that power and ground should be there. Alright, back in the engine menu, activating components and functions. Let's go for this fuel pump relay on. Start. No test light. Stop. Okay, well, we got this far. What else can we do? I want to get powers and grounds directly from the battery back here. One thing we can do is manually energize the pump. I don't know which one's power, which one's ground, but make sure it spins. And then we want to verify which wire are we missing. Are we missing power or are we missing ground? So the test light needs both to light. So let me get that set up and we'll narrow this down. So here's test one. I got my power probe extension. This is the most useful thing in the power probe kit. You can buy it separately, it's like 20 bucks. Positive and negative. So positive now feeds our test light and it's grounding through the black wire on the connector. Nice bright lights. At least we know that that ground right there, pin 3, is good. So check mark on that. Now let's move the setup over to the power wire. So we're gonna move it to here. And the test light, we want to ground out. So now the test light's connected to the ground. We want to see if we can energize that blue wire. So, let's try the cranking test again. You should energize when you turn the key on. Alright, let's see. Test light. Ooh, power. It's only when cranking. So why did our test light not light on those two wires in the first place? While we're here, let's make sure the bidirectional control works. So ECM, page down, activating functions, okay. The scanner's pretty fast. Fuel pump relay on. Let's try that. Start. Nothing. Stop. What is the hint? Hint. Fuel pump. The engine control module ECM controls fuel pump relay at 50 Hertz. So I think the fuel pump relay is actually the module. The fuel pump is activated using the start button and stopped using the stop button. Fuel pump noise is heard from the fuel tank. Engine must be switched off. What the heck? Started. No light. When I crank it, light goes out. Okay. So, what now? Let me reconnect the test light the original way. Powers and grounds, and make sure it lights up when we're cranking, because it didn't the first time. It kind of bothers me. Alrighty, test light is reconnected. Let's crank it over. Okay, it does light. Awesome. So now we confirmed, where's my laptop? We confirmed that the blue wire is good and the black wire is good all the way to the fuel pump control module. What's next? We can hook up the module and check the outputs, and we can also see what kind of signal we're getting on this yellow wire with the module plugged in. And finally, we have to make sure that the fuel pump itself is good. Alright, one quick and dirty check is this just the resistance through the fuel pump itself. So those smaller orange and blue wires, pins 4 and 5 I guess, just a resistance check, 0.7 ohms. So I assume that the fuel pump has continuity and it should fire up if the module is, you know, putting out the right voltage. What's the next step? We can plug this guy in. We can back probe those same 2 wires, crank the car and see if this is putting anything out. We can also put a scope on the little yellow wire, the pulse width modulated wire, and seeing if that signal is there. That's the next step. So if this thing is junk, we can actually hotwire the fuel pump and just put power and ground on pins 4 and 5. Make sure it spins in the right direction, and fire up this car and at least drive into my shop, because right now it's immobilized, it's getting cold and windy, and this is, you know, it's fun until it starts snowing. Well, I can't help myself. We already have the 2 wires connected, and we have powers and grounds right here, so I'm just gonna go for it. So this is our ground wire. This is ground. Let's hook up the red power wire. So basically, we have now power and ground. We're gonna hook them up right to those 2 yellow ones and see if the fuel pump spins. Ready? It sure does. Actually heard fuel pressure. Now, is it spinning the right way? What if we spin it backwards? Is it safe to do? Definitely sounded different. I don't know, let's hook it up and crank the car over and see if it starts. And if it doesn't, we'll hook it up the other way. See how empty? Holy crap, it runs! He's out of gas! I think. Oh, unless we disconnected the level sensor too. Amazing. Give it a little throttle. That's encouraging. Sweet. I like it. Bypass test for the win. So that makes me really happy. We don't even have to find the fuel pump. It works. So the dealer can go suck it. It doesn't need a fuel pump, even at 211,000 miles. Maybe it's preventative maintenance. Screw it. Let's measure the current on here. about almost 10 amps. So right now it's being full fielded. The module should actually, you know, depending on if it's idling or if you're flooring it, this thing should output the correct voltage, but right now it's running full blast. So we can already say that the correct power is the blue and the ground is the orange on the connector. So that's good to know. So if we disconnect this guy, let's see how long it runs. No fuel pump right now. It should stall out. Oh, there it goes. Blah. Sweet. Check that off the list. So we're almost ready to call this guy. We just have to do one more check with the scope on the yellow wire. Make sure that the computer is controlling this thing correctly. And then, if it is this module, it looks like you can unclip it and take it apart. I wouldn't be surprised to find some damage in here. That's gonna be awesome. Looking forward to this. FYI, if you're gonna use the extension from Power Probe, make sure to wire in an inline fuse. And I'm glad I did, because I was moving the connectors around over there. I'm like, oh, I'll move it to ground and the yellow plus width modulated wire to hook up the scope. And I moved the power wire right to the ground, and then boom. No fuss, just a blown 20 amp fuse, no harm done.